Welcome back to another Startup Junkies podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, check in with us weekly for new episodes. My name is Davis McIntyre. I'm joined by co-hosts Caleb Talley, Jeff Amron. How you guys doing today?
Doing well. It looks like you're ready for the slopes, my friend.
I am. It's a little snowy outside, so had to put on an extra few layers.
It's great. We get it. We don't get this kind of weather very often, but when we do, everybody feels like they're in 8th grade and it's a snow day. You got to get out there and take advantage of it. No doubt about it.
You got to bundle up. All my buddies are sledding right now, so after this is over, I'm already ready. But it is my absolute pleasure to introduce our guest for the podcast today, Kenny Kinley. He is president and CEO of Edafio Technology Partners with proven leadership experience in broad roles from IT, sales and marketing, account management, and many others. Kenny, how are you doing today?
Great. Thank you guys for having me.
Awesome. It's a pleasure.
Well, we're glad to have you. Why don't you give us, that's obviously a solid intro, but give us a little bit of your Wolverine-like origin story.
You bet. Glad to. So yeah, born and raised in Arkansas, actually graduated with an accounting degree and had these aspirations that I was going to be an accountant like my father. And I quickly realized that was not for me about my senior year of college. So I was fortunate back then, a company called Axiom Corporation was hiring up college grads in any type of degree back then. So jumped on, graduated from UCA on a Saturday and started with Axiom on Monday, and quickly realized that I was not technical enough to be a developer or a database administrator or any of those cool roles back in the day, but was able to find a role in leadership pretty early on, and so found that I could lead client engagements and lead technical teams pretty well. And so I was fortunate enough to spend 15 years there and learned so much, not only at Axiom, but also having clients that were, Fortune 100 clients all across the country. So really learned there my first 15 years. Quickly realized that travel was difficult with a young family. I was on the road every week, and I was actually in this room where I'm taking it from our game room right now, where I can vividly remember my wife saying, now she says she didn't say this, but this is how I heard it. You can stay married or you can stay at Axiom. And so it was with small kids, it was time to get off the road. And so had a little stop at a little company called Vestcom between Axiom and Edafio, but joined Edafio 10 years ago, actually this month, or 10 years ago in January. We were really small back then. I think I was associate number 13 back then. And so was brought in to really lead a sales organization, ended up leading one of our larger client engagements, and I've just been really fortunate to be along for the ride and watch things grow. So been at it now, I guess, right at 26 years since, so it's been a good ride.
Tell us about Edafio. Give us a little bit more of what Edafio does and where you are today.
Absolutely. Yeah. So at the highest level, Edafio is a technology services company. And so we help our clients run, grow, and protect their business. We started 22 years ago as a managed service company, which really just means we help clients keep their systems up and running, keep them patched, updated, help desk services. That's really what managed services is for us. But we've been really fortunate the last 5 or 6 years to also bring on cybersecurity division, where we're able to do that and help our clients keep their businesses secure. We've also got a cloud practice, as the cloud has been such a big deal over the last many years. So we've got a private cloud offering for clients that aren't quite ready to embrace the public cloud, but then more and more embracing public cloud offerings like Azure, so we can move clients there as well. So and then also really just a full service Microsoft offering, especially over the last couple of years as we've been remote, more and more of our clients want to do more than just, Microsoft 365 for email. So helping them with some of the collaboration tools and things like that. So we've been really fortunate to start off in managed service, but we've really branched out into other places like cyber and cloud and others.
I understand y'all also work with I guess healthcare systems and that sort of thing, and a big healthcare piece in there. I was looking at the website, and there was a portion that was highlighting value-based healthcare. So I was curious if you could elaborate on what that exactly means for a novice like me, and then also just kind of how y'all play into that role?
Yeah, we were really fortunate to get into the healthcare space, 8 or 9 years ago, right as a lot of those government requirements for electronic health record systems and things from these government agencies were coming down. So a lot of hospitals and clinic systems were just not equipped to deploy these health record systems and all the things related to that. So we were able to get in on that really early and help some hospitals and large systems not only deploy those health record systems, but also keep them up and running, and then also figure out how to use them to maximize their, the compliance programs and things like that. So at one point, healthcare was probably 75% of our business. We've seen that come down the last couple of years, just because some of these other industries are really catching up to where healthcare was from a IT needs and cybersecurity and cloud and things like that. So today it's probably just a little over 2/3 of our business, but we definitely have a large healthcare presence. One of the things I didn't mention was we do healthcare consulting. So talk about the value-based movement. So we've got several folks on our team that can come alongside hospitals and clinics and help them with their programs and do chart reviews and HIPAA training and all those things, just to help them be more equipped to handle all these vast, complex government programs.
And if you don't mind, could you run us give us a little origin story of the Catron Creek Capital Investment Fund, kind of how that started? And you and Jeff were both involved in that. So
yeah, that actually started with a breakfast meeting at Bob's Grill in Conway with Jeff Sandridge and I. And, it was part of an overall strategy to kind of start a kind of a more of a, financial acumen kind of ecosystem within UCA and in Conway. And so that's really the Catron Creek idea was really just a part of that overall strategy that Jeff and some others had worked on. So we had several breakfast meetings, brought our friend David Grimes in to help us kind of launch that. And that was a great learning experience on kind of what an angel seed fund would look like and kind of putting it together from the ground up. So it was a great experience. We got a lot. I think our initial target was to raise, $500,000, and we ended up with the initial fund over 1.5 million. So it went really well, and have had some good success through that fund. And as I was mentioning to Jeff earlier, we've still got several from that initial that we still think could be a success in the future. So great learning experience for me, just to kind of go through that. So thankful to have that opportunity.
Yeah, it was great. That was actually one of the more engaged groups too. I made the trip down. So I was in that fund, but not one of the managers. Made the trip down, and it was always good to see the level of engagement for a first fund kind of out of the blocks in that Conway area, and some really great people involved with it as well. So, and
Yeah,
we've taken that Catron name, on further. I mean, it's still there in Catron Capital Partners.
Yeah, you guys are taking it to the next level for sure. So yeah, it was interesting. We were so worried about how much we were going to raise, and we actually had people calling us. And on the last day, my neighbor across the street knocked on the door and said, "Hey, I heard about this. Can I write you a check?" So we were just overwhelmed by the amount of support for it. So it just showed though that there's a real need for that in Arkansas, and so
Absolutely.
there's continues to be. So it was a great experience.
Speaking to that.
Go ahead.
Speaking to that need and kind of what you've learned in that process, that early process of that, what kind of, I guess, learnings or aha moments of that process do you think you can impart with us as far as just, others that are interested in getting involved in that?
Yeah, I think for me, it was recognizing the different parts that you needed to make a successful ecosystem like that, because you tend to kind of focus on the startup people and these entrepreneurs. And what I realized is I would watch the pitch, right? We'd have these people come in, and I would spend about the first half of their pitch being admiring them and being envious and trying to figure out how I could help. And then the last pitch, it would be, there is no way I could do that, And so what I learned was you've got to not only have the entrepreneurial spirit, but you've also got to have the programs from the state and other people to be able to help it. And then you've got to have investors. And so what I realized is how many different people it took to make a successful system. And As much as I admire those guys, I realize that I'm going to be better off on the investor side. That's a little more the way I'm wired. And, and I love that. If any of those guys need help or advice or, funding, that's a great place to be. So that's what I realized is I was envious, but there's no way I could do
it. To that end, but you've also had experience more recently with a little bit later stage capital with the private equity side. And I know we have a lot of listeners that have gone through the early stage, maybe they've gone through a seed round and whatnot. But there's still an element of mystery about at what point does a real private equity fund come to play and how does all that work? Would you mind talking a little bit about how all that came together and how it works? Any advice you'd have?
Sure. Yeah, it's been a tremendous learning experience going through this. And so, for Edafio, we've been around, as I mentioned, 22 years and have just grown organically, right? Through relationships and client referrals and things like that. But what we realized last year was to continue to grow and invest in the things that we needed to do, like, better cybersecurity offerings or a 24/7 operations center or grow through acquisition. I mean, we had this list of things that we wanted to go do. And, our founders and owners thought they were great ideas, but really weren't willing to make that significant investment. And so that was the time really for us last summer when we realized, okay, to be able to do the things that we need to do, we're going to have to find an outside partner to go do that. So that was really the trigger for us, is when you get to a point where you've got to make significant investment in the business to take things to the next level. That's at least one good option, right? Is to go find an outside partner. And so we were fortunate enough to be able to go through the process and had a relationship with a broker that knew about the guys at MC in Boston. And so I mean, they were the first ones we talked to and just hit it off from the beginning. They had a similar vision than we did. So it really just worked out great from the beginning. So for us, it worked out really, really well.
I mean, I think that's good news, because there's always, you hear all kinds of stories about when you get to the private equity stage and this is kind of how it goes. And I think that finding that cultural fit where it's people you're going to enjoy working with and there's good alignment and objectives is really important. So congratulations. Very exciting news.
I think that would be one piece of advice, Jeff, I would give someone that's going through that process is to spend some time up front defining what you want out of that partner, right? What's important to you. And so we built that list. Initially, I built the list of things that were important to me, and then, went to our board and said, okay, guys, here's what I think are important. And so we had our list of things so that when we went and worked with a broker or even talked to potential partners, we were able to say, look, these are our core needs, right? If it's outside of these things, then you're not going to be a fit. So just not to jump into it, just looking for an investment partner, no matter what, but build out what you think is important going into it. Because that was a critical piece for us. Fortunately for us, like I said, one of the first groups we talked to, matched all the boxes. But from other friends I have that have done this, it's usually a little bit more of a drawn out process.
Do you see the strategy going forward being one of where you're building new services and you're geographically expanding, or is it also going to be looking for acquisitions as you move forward?
Yeah, it's really both. I mean, the way we've kind of defined the growth plan now is, we've grown through kind of organic, investing in a sales team slowly. So for us, it's kind of a three-pronged approach. It's going to be, more investment in salespeople, doubling the size of our sales force this year. So that piece, we're just going to do, it's what we did before. We're just going to do it faster. And then the second is through acquisition. So our vision is to kind of build a regional platform. So kind of think of Arkansas and the adjoining states as kind of a region that we're going to go after. So acquisitions in those areas, not only for things that complement us to what we do today, but also growth areas and things we want to move into. And then the third piece is really trying to figure out more of this channel sales opportunity. That's something we've dabbled with in the past and had limited success, but we think there's an opportunity there around a channel and having partners that can help us, get to more clients as well. So that's really the strategy.
Gotcha.
You spoke. Go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
So Kenny, you said, we're doubling your sales team in a lot less time. What does that look like to you? Is just like training them on culture, keeping the culture similar, keeping what's important to you and Edafio, keeping that right out front and growing as fast as y'all are. Just Talk to us a little bit about that.
I think that's probably the challenge overall for us, Davis, is just to continue to find talent and bring them on and that meet our core values and that can, ramp quickly. I mean, I think that's no matter even whether it's a sales role or back office or an engineering role. I mean, I think that's the part that a lot of companies are struggling with right now. So we've got a great recruiter. She does a fantastic job screening candidates on the front end, and then we send them through an assessment process where they go through and answer. I mean, it's extensive. It's like a couple hours to take, and then it's kind of a personality assessment kind of program. And so we found that is very indicative of success for us, people that go through that, and then multiple interviews, team interviews. And so we've got to we take our time through that process. And so I think that's something we've got to do, is even though now we've got to add people faster, we added 27 people in 2021. We'll probably add between 35 and 40 would be my guess in 22. So, we've got to, we can't lose that diligence on the process, because if you try to hire too fast, then you hire the wrong people. And then instead of hiring 35, you're going to have to hire 45. So it'll be on us to make sure we do that in a methodical way.
Davis stole my question. I was going to ask what you had approached, potential funding partners with that lens of what's important and what the core is. And I was going to ask, kind of how you applied that to the growth internally. Thanks, Davis. That's the best I could do.
Thanks for the answer.
One of the good parts on the recruiting front is our openness now to be able to hire anywhere. And so I think this is, the good news is there's going to be more candidates. The bad news is the competition's high, right?
Yeah.
Because everyone else does that too. So, for example, we've got, 14 associates in our Northwest Arkansas office. I say office, they're mostly remote like everyone else, but, and being able to say, okay, how do we grow there? Not just in Central Arkansas, or we've had, folks from the last 2 years, they've moved out. So we've got people in Atlanta, South Carolina, 2 in Florida, 1 in Dallas. And so it's really shown us that to recruit in a specific geography, unless it's just something that a client needs on site, we can really recruit anywhere and onboard people anywhere. So I think we're going to have to embrace that to continue to grow.
It gives you a lot larger pool to draw from, and you don't have to worry necessarily about relocation costs. People are living where they want to live. It's how does that make you think about expansion as it relates to office space and different things? What's that look like now that we're in this kind of hybrid world at best? I would say post-pandemic, but almost post-pandemic.
Right. When in the fall of 2019, we had plans to expand all 3 offices. So we had the plans drawn up to build the other half of our North Little Rock office. We were going to double the size of Conway, and we were looking at larger space in our North Little Rock or our Rogers office in Hunt Tower. So all 3 offices were full, couldn't find a place to park. And so we were looking at plans for all 3 as we went into 2020. And then, March 2020 happens and everybody goes home, and, we've seen the need for physical office space. It's just a lot lower. And so it's important that we have space for people to come in and have somewhere to drop. And hopefully, we get through this, this where we can be in the office more together. But I think for us, the days of 5 days a week in the same office, I don't think we'll ever go back to that. Yeah. And what I found, Jeff, that's interesting is it really depends on the CEO on kind of how that works, because I've got some friends that are old school. They want all their people in the office. I mean, some of our clients never went remote. I mean, they stayed in the office, or like our clients that are hospitals, we have to have people.
They have to be
so
there. Yeah.
I think it's based on the company, but also the characteristics of the CEO and what they embrace. And so while personally, I don't work well from home, I end up in the pantry with a fistful of Fritos multiple times a day. I've got, it's icing here today, so I'm not going to go out, but I need to be in an office. But I would say most of our associates have really embraced the hybrid work. I do these quarterly roundtables with about 10 people at a time. And so we just finished up our last one yesterday, and 90+% of our people were at home. I mean, and so it's to be able to embrace that. I think for a technology company, we won't go back to 5 days a week. I just can't see it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a common theme. In fact, we're hearing some of the CTO and CIO level folks that we talk to at times say, as a corporation, you can't afford to mandate people to come back, particularly the high tech people, because they'll leave and make 25% more somewhere else if you're not careful. That war on talent is real. And as you think about it, that's kind of a good segue into the whole HR piece. We talked a little bit about how careful you are in hiring and whatnot. How are you finding that war that everybody's going through to keep and retain the best people? How are you guys managing through that?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's a tough process to go find, especially at that senior experience level, because it's so competitive. So, but we just do the traditional search. If we've got to find an agency to help us for specialized skills, we'll embrace that. The thing we've done the most, and this was even pre-pandemic, was we've got a fairly robust college intern program. We call them junior associates because we learned they don't like to be called interns. So we call them junior associates. But we recruit heavily from the colleges and bring them in for either summer internships or even during the semester. And we put them to work. I mean, we'll put them to work at our help desk or on site with clients. And so, and as those people graduate, we bring them on and kind of promote up as much as we can. So, we can't hit our growth targets by doing that alone, but man, we've got some really, really bright associates that have come up through that intern program. So I think we're going to have to do more of that, partnering with, colleges like the U of A. We do a lot with UCA and Conway and a lot of other, talking to other colleges, especially as they get these cyber programs and these other programs built out. I think that's going to be a huge part of our growth.
Yeah, it's interesting. And the other thing that occurs to me is, given that you've got this breadth of managed services you do, and in the pandemic pushed everybody at home, did that also allow you to create some new service offerings because where the workforce of your clients is sitting is different and they needed different things? Or how has that part of it been?
There were definitely more of an openness to do things like a Teams migration or move into SharePoint off of these local drives and things. There was definitely more of an appetite to do that than there was before. So that's probably the big thing. And then it's a little easier to have those cybersecurity discussions to say, okay, you've got people spread out. We need to make sure we're, monitoring things. So I'd say there was more of an openness to it for sure. The other part of it that's been interesting is, the first 6 months, from a new business perspective, everything just kind of stopped, right? Nobody wanted to talk to anybody about making a change in IT. But now our ability to build those relationships virtually and not have to be on site as much through the sales process, I think there's a bigger openness to that too. I mean, you still need to meet the people and have the relationships, but instead of 4 or 5 face-to-face meetings, there may be 1 or 2, but then the rest of it you can do virtually. So that's been a change as well. And I don't think that'll go back. I think people will just embrace that even more.
Yeah, we've seen that. A lot of people have said that. It's, they start looking at their P&L and they look in the rearview mirror. It's like, why did we spend all that money on travel and lodging and all that when maybe 80% of that could be done virtually? It doesn't mean that you eliminate all the face-to-face stuff, but you can do an awful lot of business development, just like we're talking here, and get to know people pretty well, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Agreed.
As you're thinking about, that cybersecurity element, which you were just speaking to, with people being remote and that sort of thing, what are probably some things people need to be mindful of as their work or the employee, their workforce is virtual, and maybe they're dealing with some sensitive materials?
Yeah, I think each company, and one thing we talk to our clients about a lot is just having some basic, whether they're in your handbook or just rules of engagement for working remote, around how you handle sensitive information, where you store things on your laptop versus, in a cloud setting, how you email things, making sure they're encrypted or not. There's just things when you're in a home environment that's just different, right? You're just naturally looser. So I think that's something that just doing that, having the conversations with the clients, making sure you're doing regular training and you're talking about those things. And then we're still having discussions with a lot of clients that are still looking at cyber insurance and just some things that in today's environment are just required. I mean, you just got to do it. And so I think, again, through some of the remote, and some of it's just the nature of cyber and the breaches that you read about almost daily, there's things like that used to be a nice to have, and now you've just got to have them. And we're in an interesting place in our business where at some point in the near future, if a client's not willing to have cyber insurance or do multi-factor authentication for their key applications, or some type of firewall for remote setting. I mean, those aren't going to be optional. They're going to be requirements. And so for companies like us to be able to do business, you're just going to have that stuff.
Kenny, are you guys also going down the road of all the privacy related stuff? We know there's emerging privacy regulations coming down. You got GDPR coming out of the EU, and there's all kinds of stuff going on in nearly every state, and Asia's got their own set of standards. How are you looking at the privacy side of things?
Yeah, we're trying to stay on top of it for our clients the best we can. Now, given the healthcare presence, we're pretty savvy in that space around HIPAA and things like that. But we're getting more and more questions on that. So our healthcare consulting team is becoming more of a privacy and compliance team, over time. So I think, we'll have to continue to evolve in that space because our clients are asking those questions.
Given like a lot of our listeners are, entrepreneurs and startups and stuff, what's kind of the first recommendation on terms of cybersecurity? Right off the bat, you should probably get these 3 things or 4 things, whatever it is. What would you recommend?
Yeah, we typically start any client we're talking to, regardless of size, is to do just a basic assessment of their setup. And so it's hard to say, here's the 3 things to go do, because they're all different, right? They may be e-commerce business, or they may have a, old legacy system sitting on an old server, under somebody's desk. And so I would recommend just a basic cybersecurity assessment from a, reputable provider. And, we obviously do that, but there's a lot of other good companies around here that do those things. And just to get the basics covered, because it's so complicated now. I mean, you can't be an expert. I think about even my early days at Edafio, when we'd have engineers who could be experts on all things systems and network and some security things that were pretty basic by then. Technology is so specialized now, you've almost got to get somebody from the outside to come in and say, okay, just tell me where my gaps are. So, and that doesn't have to be expensive, especially if you're an entrepreneur and a startup. That doesn't have to be a major expense, but it's money well spent to have an outside company come in. And it's really more now than just running scans and, doing some of that, vulnerability tests and pin attack tests and things like that. It's gotten so much more complicated. So that'd be my recommendation, is just do a basic cyber assessment. And we recommend at least once a year, because as your business grows and evolves, you add more applications, you add more people, more locations. That's kind of a good basic step to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is introduced to the concept of red teaming. I guess it's been a year now. But is that something y'all do as well? Just kind of that process of going on the offensive rather than the defensive?
Yeah, we've got more and more clients open to it now. We've been talking to them about it for a while, and some of our larger clients, especially hospitals, they've embraced that for a while. But you're right, it's becoming more and more even in smaller businesses. So I would say we've offered that for a while, willing to do those. Our clients have not necessarily been willing to do that and allocate the time and resources, but just like the cyber insurance or multi-factor, eventually that'll be a requirement for every business. It's heading that way.
In a more general sense, Kenny, as you look at the future of Edafio, are there some technologies or services that you're really excited about that you see as possibilities for Edafio, or in general, what do you see kind of on the horizon as it relates to technology innovations that you think are going to be game changers for the clients that you serve?
Yeah, I think that's one of our opportunities, Jeff, is just to help our clients stay on top of all those. There are so many different cyber offerings and point solutions and things that are out there. And so just the time and energy to be able to stay on top of all that. So I think it's very exciting. I think the challenge for our clients and even for Edafio is how they integrate, what you use for what, and just staying on top of it. So yeah, I think it's really exciting on that front. And then also not only cyber, but just on the application front, whether it's Microsoft or NetSuite or ServiceNow. I mean, those Salesforce, there's a lot of companies like us that are moving into more of that application layer and helping clients not only keep those systems up, but also helping them optimize them and get them set up and manage actually that application level. So I think that's a real growth opportunity for companies like Edafio and we've seen that in the health record space. I mean, we've got a pretty good level of expertise in some of these health record systems, and we'll actually help our clients manage those. So I think that's an exciting piece too, is to, it used to be in the managed service space, you kind of stayed away from the applications. Your job was to keep them up, and then you stayed away from that layer. I think those days are over. We're going to have to embrace those and really become more consultative with our clients to help them use them.
You developed this level of expertise in the EMRs and that whole infrastructure. There's still a lot of interest in personalized medicine and in what we were calling for a while PHRs, your own biometric data and then taking wellness and your wellness data into your own hands. How do you see that individual side going, and how do you advise your clients about that? How to use that? I wonder how the healthcare clients are thinking that they can make the patient a more active participant in some of that.
Yeah, I think that space, some of our clients have been very progressive in that space, but I think it's going to be really similar to the telehealth movement, right? We talked about telehealth for years and years, and it took a pandemic, right, to make people really open to it, and it's drifted back a little bit. You could tell people are still drifting back to going. There's not as much telehealth as there was 12 months ago, but that's kind of my hope on the personalized medicine too. We need something to trigger. The patients ultimately have to drive it. I mean, right. I think it's going to depend on that patient demand, but it's coming that way. And that's what we want to do, is when things like that happen, we want to be there to help our clients. So for example, one of our clients, I mean, they wanted to make that pivot to telehealth. And I mean, we found a vendor, stood things up, set up telemed rooms in days. And so that's kind of what we want to be, is that partner and extension of that client to help make those things happen. So as that space evolves, we'd love to be a part of that.
That's great. Very exciting.
It's probably the part of the conversation where we start to land the plane. We kind of have our prepare for landing question. Is, if you were able to go back in time and look in your crystal ball, whether that be before Axiom, whether that be before Edafio, and give your younger self advice based on everything you know now, what might that advice be?
The first thing would be enjoy your hair a little bit more. That would be the first. But that my wife's had a harder time with that than I have. But I think the thing I would go back and tell myself is don't worry so much about what other people think. I mean, it is just a vicious cycle. I'm a pleaser. I still am. I still struggle with it. But you just got to do the right thing and do what you think is right. Take all the information. But I tell myself not to worry so much about what people think about you. And through mentorships and relationships, and you read and you try to soak up all the information you can, make the best decision you can, and just move forward. So again, I'm not perfect at it, but I'm definitely better than I was 15 years ago.
That's great advice. Where can our listeners and viewers find out more about Edafio or more about your story?
The best place would be our website, Edafio, EDAFIO.com. Our marketing director, Melissa, does a fantastic job with our website. We've also all the social media. We're out there on LinkedIn and other things. So I would say that's probably the best place. And then if you want to contact me, I'm a big LinkedIn guy. I don't do a lot of the other social media stuff, but I'm a LinkedIn addict. So feel free to look me up there, and would love to connect.
Fantastic. And Kenny, thanks so much for coming on. I mean, it's always great to get caught up, and we're really glad you were able to take the time with us today. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Kenny. We appreciate it.
We'll see you later.
Thanks, guys.